Hoy Infinito les presenta al Dr. Brian Weiss, una eminencia mundial, descubridor y creador de la terapia de vidas pasadas. Well, Dr. Weiss, Brian, may I call you Brian?
Yes, it's better, Brian.
It's better for me, so I will call you Brian. First of all, be welcome to Argentina. I know you just arrived to give a seminar. You are going to do a seminar or a master class tomorrow? Or a special meeting tomorrow in Mar del Plata?
Yes, it's the fourth time I'm here in Argentina to talk and to meet people and to do these workshops, these seminars. And the reason I do the seminars, it's not really a master class. That I do in the United States to train therapists to do my work. But it's a seminar where people will have their own opportunity to have regressions. Because it's one thing to write about past lives and the theory of past lives and how past lives can help people, cure people, can change their views of life and death and what happens after we die. But it's another thing for people to experience for themselves. So I try to go to many places. I've been all over the world to do these workshops where people in the audience can experience a regression for themselves. So I will put them into a deeper state. And you, boy, if you come, you will have this too.
I will.
Yes,
I'll be in Mar del Plata next days.
I hope so.
So I'll be there.
Yes, so Sunday. So they go into a deep state. It's very safe, relaxed. And in that deep state, I take them back in time so that the people in the audience can have their own regression and feel now the power of it, feel the emotions, feel the sensation, the experience, not just reading about it, but actually to experience it. So for me, this is a powerful way to demonstrate the techniques that I use. And it's very safe, even though it's different from in my office. If you were in my office, boy, we would be doing a regression one-to-one. And I might use a quicker technique, or I might do something a little bit different. But basically, you would still go into that very relaxed state. And in that state, we would go back in time. But in my office, one-to-one, you could talk to me, and you can tell me what you're experiencing, and I could ask you questions. So I could say, like, what do you see? How do you feel? Tell me about this mountain that you see in front of you, and these strange people in loincloths or in leather, ancient times, not so ancient times, or conquistador times, or whatever it is. And you could provide more detail. Yes, I'm a man, and I'm carrying this old gun. It has an end like that. And you would tell me these. In the group, we can't do that because too many people are involved. But I could still say, we're going back in time. You're going to visit this experience, this scene from a past life. You won't be able to tell me about it because there are too many people, several hundred people.
I'll tell anyway. I will tell you.
But the experience is still powerful. Not as powerful as in the office, but still very interesting. And I hope you can...
No, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there. Well, let's try to start from the beginning. I mean, the beginning... Well, the beginning is one of the main subjects of our meeting because we don't know where the beginning is.
You're right.
No? But let's try to go from the beginning of your present life. I mean, I've read about you and I know there was a sort of switch in your life, you know, through your work with a patient. But how was your life previously? How was your life before Catherine's case?
Yes. For me, there have been these two distinct parts to my life. So it was very clearly a BC. As we say in English, BC means antes Christ, so
yeah.
AC. But in English, it's called BC and AD, after death. So BC for me is before Catherine.
Before BC.
Yes, it takes that form. And my life was very much structured, and I would say a bit rigid, I was designing the foundation and the structure unconsciously for the work that came after. So for me it became very academic, and that was my life. I was building this structure. I went to college in the U.S., very academic, Columbia University, Yale University Medical School, became a physician, then a psychiatrist, also my training at Yale, which is a very important and famous university in the United States. And writing papers, scientific papers, book chapters, and becoming a professor, moving up the ranks academically, moved to Miami, Florida in 1974, becoming professor of psychiatry at the University of Miami and chairman of the psychiatry department at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami Beach. Very rapid advancement in the academic world. And I had written more than 40 scientific papers and book chapters. And that was my life before Catherine, academically. Otherwise, my life was going, I wouldn't say smoothly, because there was a death of a child in this time before Catherine, and the death of my father. But my marriage was a long-time marriage. My wife and I have now been married 39 years. We met in 1963. I can't even do the mathematics anymore. And we were young, very young, but it was like almas gemelas. It was, love came very quickly, and we're still together after all of these years. But that part was going well, except for the death of my first child, a son, who died in 1971, about 9 years before the therapy with Catherine began. Mm-hmm. And then I had 2 children after that, so they're grown now, and that part was going well. My professional life was going very well also. And I was kind of what a psychiatrist has become these days, a secular priest. So I was more agnostic. I did not believe in reincarnation, not in past lives, very skeptical about these things, and did not believe in New Age, did not know much about it. Much to my embarrassment today, because that meant I did not have an open mind. I had already prejudged these things. And my mind, was following Freud and following the new field of biological psychiatry. And that was my life when Catherine came in and began the second half. Yeah. I did not realize this right away, but that was the beginning of the second part of my life.
So we can say that in your present life, you have 2 lives, a little bit, no?
Yes, exactly. And it's very different now, because after Catherine and finding out about past lives and spiritual dimensions and masters and all of energies, all of these other areas that I knew nothing about, now I changed completely in terms of my values, in terms of what's important to me and what is not important. But I didn't change the structure. The scientific structure is still there. So everything that happens, I still filter through that lens. That remains.
It's like a base,
Yes.
When you build a building or you paint a painting, you create a base, and then you build more creative over that base. No?
Exactly.
So maybe it worked.
It was important for me, because I think without that base, I wouldn't have the stability to filter what comes through now. Because in the New Age field now, there's a great deal, or this holistic field, or spiritual psychotherapy, whatever names you want to put on this. There are healing and healers. There's a great deal that is valid, that really works. And I've seen healers and psychics and others from all over the planet. Incredible things I've witnessed. And others who are not at all opportunistic and really not real. And I have to be able to filter what's real from what's not. That's where the base helps me a lot.
And what happened when Catherine appeared in your life?
Well, when she appeared in my life, at first nothing happened. because for 1.5 years we did traditional therapy. She wouldn't take any medicine because she had a lifelong fear of gagging or choking. And so she couldn't take medicine because she had difficulty swallowing.
She couldn't swallow pills?
No. And she had lots of symptoms: anxieties, phobias, depression, insomnia, panic. And so for 1 year, more than 1 year, I treated her with just psychotherapy. I had learned to do this, of course, in my training. We didn't make too much progress, a little bit, but not very much. And so I fell back on a technique that I had learned some years before Catherine, when I was an intern. I had learned how to do hypnosis. Hypnosis is putting people into relaxed states so that they can concentrate, their memory is improved, and their body is very relaxed. It's a normal state. We're all hypnotized every day. When you drive your car and your mind wanders and you forget the last few blocks, but you didn't crash, that's hypnosis. When you're watching a movie and you're so absorbed and concentrating in the movie that you don't hear the people eating popcorn around you, that's hypnosis. Reading a good book and you don't hear the traffic, that's hypnosis.
When you look into the eyes of the person you love, that's hypnosis.
That's hypnosis, oh yes. Okay. A little deeper state. And there are many levels. So I use that with Catherine to put her into a deep state of concentration, because she could not remember much from her childhood.
Can we stop for a minute and we go back with this story?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Volvemos en un minuto con el Dr. Brian Weiss. Well, then, what happened with Catherine when you start hypnotizing her?
She was one of those people that can go very deeply. And the first time she went very deeply, she did go back to her childhood and remembered traumas from her childhood, significant traumas. And yet her symptoms persisted. She was remembering with emotion, which we call catharsis. And yet her symptoms were still there. So I thought, we have to go back even farther. Maybe instead of 5 years old, because she was remembering when she was 5, something happened when she was 3. And so the next session I told her, go back to the time when your symptoms first began, thinking that she would go back to a younger age. Yeah. And she went back about 4,000 years, because she took that literally.
You opened a new door, a new big door.
Yes, for both of us. She did not believe in past lives either. And she was with a different name and a different face, and describing with vivid details and emotions a life where she drowned in a flood or a tidal wave nearly 4,000 years ago. Her baby being torn from her arms by the force of the water. She did not have any children in this life. And so this was confusing to me, because the drama, the level of details that she was seeing visually was very strong, not like her daydreams, not like imagination. And she had 2 other lives that first time, and then she came out of the hypnosis. And already I could see changes beginning in her. She looked more relaxed. She was very tense, very anxious person. By the next week, she told me that her fear of choking or gagging had disappeared. This does not happen from imagination. She was sleeping better. Her anxiety was less. And week by week, as we went through the therapy, all of her symptoms disappeared without having to use any medicine in her case. And then that was shocking to me. I still had trouble believing, because I was so academic, so rational, so left-brain, so skeptical at first. And yet something very weird or bizarre happened. About the 4th or 5th session, she died in one of these ancient lifetimes, floated above her body, finding a beautiful light, being replenished by the light. And she told me there were 2 people there at the light to see me, my father and my son, both of whom had died before the sessions with Catherine began. And she told me my father's name. She told me about my son's medical condition. She did not know any of these details, and there was no place to look it up. And she told me other very secret facts.
Of your own life?
Of my own life.
So that confirmed that something new was happening?
Yes, because I knew, and she is not an investigative reporter, not working for the FBI. She was a laboratory technician in the hospital. There was no place to look up this information. This was before the internet, before people had access to all of this information. My father didn't even have an obituary, neither did my son. There was no place to look up the details. And she knew the details. And I asked her, where are you getting this information? And she said, it's coming from spirits that are around me. They're telling me. They're not in bodies. And that, to me, changed my world that instant. Because then I knew that if she was right about my father and my son, I believe she was telling me the truth about past lives also. And then...
Was that scary for you?
Yes, yes. Scary and comforting at the same time. Comforting because my father and my son
were somewhere.
And she said they were with these spirits. Their spirits. They were somewhere. They were alive. They didn't die when their physical bodies died. Scary because my whole worldview was turned upside down. And I didn't know that this other world existed. And here I was finding it out. That was the very moment when I knew, because I knew deep down, that she was telling the truth.
The truth. A new truth for
A
you
new
and,
truth.
and for the world.
Yes.
And you went on with her, meeting new lives and
Yes.
knowing more about reincarnation.
Yes, she had about 10 or 12 lifetimes. And after that, she didn't need it anymore because she was cured. Those were the lifetimes that had a connection to her present life as Catherine. And then when she resolved those issues, it healed all of her symptoms. Along the way...
She was healing the main traumas from those 12 lives that were still affecting her.
Exactly. And along the way, she kept giving me messages from these masters. Messages about life and death and why people are here, what's the purpose of life. And since they were so correct about my father and my son, I was recording these sessions exactly. Because Catherine I was seeing in 1980, and 81, and 82, this is now 26 years ago. And I was recording every session word by word. So I did not write Muchos Vidas, Muchos Sabios for many years after Catherine because I was concerned with my reputation and my career. I had no intention to go public about this.
That was your fear?
That's right. And I had a very good position as chairman of the psychiatry department. This was jeopardized if I go public. Eventually I decided to do this with my wife's support and because we had come through so many things, through times when we had no money at all in the beginning, the death of a child, all of this together that we needed when I decided to go public.
But you faced your new and your deepest mission here.
Yes, that was part of it. Because since that time, it's been 26 years, I've now worked with more than 4,000 patients in my office, individually doing regressions.
A lot.
A lot of people. A lot of people. And people from all over the world, but also in groups. So if we add up all the numbers of people that I've had in groups during regression sessions, like here in Buenos Aires and Mar del Plata and Punta del Este and also Tokyo and Osaka and London and Madrid and Barcelona and everywhere. It's more than 100,000 people. And many of them have had experiences and written to me and confirmed their experiences, validated their experiences, had healing. So it's a huge number of people. But at that time, there was one, Catherine. So I taped every session, and I did for many years with other patients. And when I wrote the book, I wanted it word for word. So the editor edited the parts from me, like my story, where I went to school, or this and that. But I told them, you cannot edit from the tapes her part, because every word may have a meaning that I'm not aware of yet. Every paragraph, I don't know. Maybe there's something in it that I don't realize yet. Don't change that. Thank God for that, because I've had so many validations over the years that I didn't know at the time. For example, I was confused with Catherine's first session. How could she die in a flood or tidal wave? She was describing a life in the Near East, which I saw as, wow, this is not an area where they get tidal waves or hurricanes. But she was probably on one of the islands in the Mediterranean, such as Thera. And although the year wasn't exactly correct, when the volcano in Thera, which we now call Santorini, erupted almost 4,000 years ago, it created gigantic tidal waves, 100-feet waves, that went all the way, covered the islands, destroyed the civilization on Thera and other islands, and went all the way to Greece, the Near East, northern Egypt, with tidal waves, tsunami.
Yeah.
And that's probably what she was describing. So a geologist sent me that years later. And so I'm glad I didn't change things, because so many people have responded to those words. I wanted to keep them pure, exactly what she was saying, word for word.
And do we all have several past lives?
I think we do now. You know, every question you ask, boy, it has resonances at deeper levels, because I've thought about these questions myself. And I've asked people in the deep states, for example, how do the numbers fit? Like, there are more people than ever before. Where do the souls come from? Because if we're all having past lives, and now the population is larger, how does this fit? That's that scientific, rational part of me, which is always questioning to make sure it's real. And the answer that comes back most often is that this is not the only place where there are souls. Souls exist in many dimensions. And
not even planets. You mean other levels, other kinds of other dimensions, not physical places.
See, so it may be physical places, but it can be non-physical dimensions too, as modern physics is talking about now. So it may be that a soul is here for the first time, but it's not a new soul being created. It's coming from another place. And so I think most of us have had past lives, but occasionally a new soul comes in. I don't think it would start in Buenos Aires, because it's too complicated. Maybe it starts in a little village learning about agriculture and earth, and what are these strange things called people, and why do they act in this way? So, but you don't get to the Buenos Aires until later.
And why does a soul need to reincarnate?
I think that this is a large school here, that we have lessons
here
to learn.
On Earth.
Earth, exactly. Lessons of compassion, love, charity, hope, nonviolence. All of these lessons, patience.
It's a hard school.
It's a hard school. This is the hard place. This is the hard school. The other side, what people call heaven, which may have many different dimensions and levels also, that's not so hard. But here, in this school, we have physical bodies. We have pain.
And that hurts.
It hurts. Grief, loss. People die. We have illnesses. We have diseases. It hurts. So it's a very hard school. But it's a wonderful school, because here we have physical love. We have sensations, smells. We can see the sky and the waters. And it's a great school. It's a physical school. It's very, very difficult. But it's a good school.
It's like school.
It's like school.
We remember our own schools in that term. So
exactly.
We come back in a minute. Enseguida volvemos. Is the unconsciousness only one for all of our lives? Or is an unconsciousness for each one life we live?
I think that when we come into a physical body in this world, we tend to forget our past lives, because we have to see if the lesson is really learned. That is, we forget our past lives. And many cultures have theories for why we forget the past lives. Pressing here, or crossing the river of Lethe, the Greek, because they all knew about past lives. Plato wrote about past lives. Many scholars and scientists and philosophers over the years. So why do we forget? And I think it's to see, did we really learn? For example, are we not violent now? Because we know in our hearts, deep down, that spiritual beings that we are not violent? Or is it because we were violent in the 14th century and we were punished for that? Or we had difficult lifetimes after that? But the real answer is within, looking within. Are we non-violent now? Because it's our nature. So that's why we forget. But now more and more people are remembering their past lives, because the world is in more danger now. We're in danger of man-made problems, global warming and wars and pollution and extinction of species, possibly catastrophic things. So it's very important. Now we're allowed to learn about our past lives, because we have to catch up spiritually with the technological advances. So I think now so many people are remembering their past lives either in hypnosis and regression, sometimes spontaneously, not through hypnosis at all. When you go to a city for the first time and you know your way around, say Prague or Berlin, and where the old church was, but the church has not been there for 200 years, but you remember, why isn't the church here? And you know where the secret room in the church was. These are documented true stories of patients who remembered past lives by déjà vu, or in dreams.
In dreams. I was thinking about which are the sources of dreams. Do they come from there sometimes?
Sometimes it is a past life. It's not always Freudian. You may have a metaphor, symbol, yes. But sometimes when you dream of yourself in an ancient place, past time, it's not Freudian. It's not a metaphor. Maybe that's actually a past life fragment emerging into the dream. So many times I hear my patients talking about their dreams, and that's where we go in the regression session, because I know that's the door for them. They're already telling me where to go to help them.
They are more free. I enjoy dreaming a lot, and maybe I have a sort of surrealistic grammar, no? And because they are more free than life.
Yes.
You find the connections in dreams are more free.
Absolutely. We don't have our usual consciousness guarding the door. So the subconscious, the unconscious is right there. The usual barriers when we're waking are gone. So in dreams we can be more creative and answers can come. That's why dream interpretation is so important. But when we're awake, then our left brains, our logic, is getting in the way. So when we start to have a feeling, an intuition, an insight, we sometimes say, no, this can't be. This can't be. So for example, if you're walking down the street and you start to think of a schoolmate, a classmate that you haven't seen since high school or grammar school, for no reason at all, and you dismiss that. Oh, no, I have to pay attention here because maybe there's a store I want to shop at. And then you turn the corner and there that person is. But your intuition was telling you this person is near. In the dream, you know what it is. You can make the connection because your logical mind is not in the way.
Yeah, intuition is called another thing. Intuition in dreams is just, it's more real.
Yes, it's real. But actually intuition in waking is real too. We just don't give it enough credit. It's very important. Many people say to me, there are no coincidences, because coincidences are not accidents. It's the intuition telling you, pay attention, something's happening. So I now pay much more attention to intuition, to instinctive behaviors and thoughts and gut feelings, because before Catherine I didn't, and after Catherine this is one of the changes. Yes.
And can we train that?
Yes, you certainly can train yourself to be more intuitional. You have to start by paying attention. It doesn't have to be difficult. Pay attention to your intuitions. When do you get these feelings? And intuition is not a fear. It's a deep down feeling. It doesn't come with fear or anxiety. It's just a knowing. You know this. And for some reasons it happens in the oddest way. It may not be important, or it may be very important. But so you start thinking of this person, and then they call you. Pay attention to that. When you're standing waiting for an elevator, and there are 6 elevators there, just play a little game, like which one is coming. Yeah, but that's training for the intuition, because you already know. When the phone rings, guess who's calling. Before you look in the identification or anything like that. This is all the training. Meditation is another way. I've started doing that, but that's not for everybody. You train yourself to clear your mind, to become mindful. And that just means to watch what's going on inside your mind, without comment, without editing, but that helps you to pay attention to your intuition also. It can be life-saving. Boy, for example, you get an intuition stop just before you walk in front of a bus. You should pay attention to that.
And does meditation help to merge these feelings or these knowings, make the space more clear?
Absolutely.
During my life, I've tried some different techniques of meditation. And is there one better than others, or are all the different shapes of the same way to getting in touch with oneself?
I believe they're all similar. They're different techniques, but you're going to the same place. And that place is awareness. It's mindfulness. Just aware of what's happening when you're not thinking. And this is a very useful technique, whichever technique you use, because that's what you want, the end result. So if you're walking from here to Avenida Florida, there are probably many ways of doing it, but your destination is the same. You can go this way or this way or this way. You can walk, you can take a taxi, whatever. But as long as you wind up in that place, you are where you're supposed to be. Meditation is like that. It's the means to get to a place of peace, inner peace, and mindfulness, awareness, whichever route you want to take. So take what's ever easiest for you. There's no one way. And many different types of meditation teachers. But it's useful because it helps to clear the mind. In India, some people remember their past lives by meditating backwards, backwards, backwards in time to when they were younger, to when they were a child, to when they were an infant, to when they were in utero, and back into a past life. For those of us from the West, that's too disciplined, too tedious.
We need help.
We need help.
Your help in this case, for example.
I just speed it up. Same result. That's like walking to Mar del Plata. I prefer the airplane, so we can get there quickly.
And do cells have any kind of consciousness or memory? Are cells other parts of this kind of different shapes we can use?
Cells of our body,
Yes.
I think, do have consciousness in the sense that there may be a cellular memory. It doesn't explain past lives completely, but we know from work with transplants, for example, that feelings and other sensitivities can be transmitted. We know from certain work with worms that memories can be transmitted through cellular processes, transplanting. For example, in heart transplants, you see sometimes the recipient taking on some of the characteristics of the donor. For example, someone who has never drunk beer, doesn't like beer, then has a transplant and suddenly develops a taste for beer. And the donor loved beer. That kind of thing you see a lot of, and you know that this is a form of cellular transfer of some sort of sensitivity or memory. But with past lives it's more complicated, because so many times people who have died as children or young, not having passed on any genetic material, they didn't have any children, but they remember the lifetime as a child. So if you remember a lifetime, for example, and I'm making this up, I'm not a psychic telling you, where you died when you were 5 years old in Russia in the 18th century, You didn't have any children. You were only 5 years old. But now you remember in detail that life, what happened, the facts about Russia and your parents and things like that. That's not genetic. You don't have a genetic link to that little boy a couple of centuries ago in Russia. So we know that it's more than genetic transmission.
And do we carry illness and sickness from one life to another one? Or, I mean, when we have when we are ill, does that come from other lives that we have to pass through them?
Sometimes. It's a very interesting question. I'm actually thinking about that too, because certainly for psychological problems, yes. I've seen that a lot. Someone is thrown off a castle wall in the 15th century, and now they have a fear of heights. Catherine drowned, and she has a fear of gagging or choking. And she also wound up having a fear of water that I didn't even know about. So we bring those symptoms or illnesses, anxieties, depression, with us. Vulnerabilities. But then I was thinking, well, what about physical diseases like cancer or something like that? I know we bring pain with us. Absolutely. But, for example, I was seeing a radiologist, a doctor in my hospital, who had terrible back pain for years. And he went to orthopedic surgeons and chiropractic physicians and others with no relief. And he had to take medicine because the pain was severe, but he did not like taking the medicine because it made him tired and fuzzy. You know, his mind wasn't sharp. When we did a regression, and he found himself as a soldier, one soldier, in a battlefield of thousands in the Middle Ages, and he was speared in the back. That's how he died in that life. And when he remembered that, his back pain disappeared. It doesn't prove the lifetime, but the pain disappeared. It changed his life completely. So
and can we heal illness in that way?
Yes,
also?
absolutely.
Concrete illness.
Concretely. And then I was thinking about cancers, and that maybe we bring a vulnerability, or substance abuse. You know, did you use alcohol in England in the 14th century to solve your problems and other times, and are you bringing that pattern forward into this life? Yes, people do that too. Not so much the illness as the vulnerability to the illness. And I find, yes, this technique does help a great deal with physical illnesses as well. All kinds. Asthma, and you found that you died in a fire in whenever, and the smoke inhalation, and that's why the breathing problems. Not all cases of asthma, but some. And I remember a patient I had from England whose asthma got much better when we found this cause in a fire several centuries ago in a past life. So I do think physical illnesses are also brought over, or the vulnerability, or the pattern. And through awareness, through understanding, we can solve those problems. We can heal those symptoms. There's also, boy, the understanding about death, that it's not what we think it is, that we're actually immortal because we're souls, spiritual beings. There's a beautiful quote from a Christian mystic whose name is Teilhard de Chardin. In English, it goes like this, because it has a nuance in it. He said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." I love that quote.
That's great.
Because it captures the essence of our existence.
We go on in a minute. Thank you, Brian.
Good.
Ya volvemos con el Dr. Brian Weiss. Well, we talked about illness, and we talked about death. And I think that death is one of the main big fears of our culture, of ourselves. Why are we so scared about death? If there's no necessary of being like that, no?
But
if there's no need. I'm sorry.
There really is no need, but we are scared because it's the unknown. It's been, ever since humans have developed consciousness, the ability to think and self-perception. They've been curious about what happens after we die. This is how religions evolve. This is theories of death and dying. It's the great unknown, because it's very difficult to prove it, very difficult to say it's this or it's not. So I think when I came upon this, not just the concept of reincarnation, the concept is ancient. People have believed in reincarnation for thousands and thousands of years. Most of the world now believes in reincarnation, counting the Eastern religions and the people of the East, India, China, Japan, all these countries. But even in South America, statistics show that about 50% of people in Latin America believe in reincarnation. In the United States, which lags behind, about 30%. And in Europe, sort of in the middle. But most of the world does. And so why do we forget when we know this? And I think one answer is it's been intellectual. It's been like, oh, you're taught this as a child, but what about the evidence? We're taught so much when we're 2 years old and 3 and 4 and 5. We're taught in our cultures and in our religions, and we just accept that, undigested. And then when we get older, it's become a belief system, but we don't really know. And here, this is why I do the workshops like in Mar del Plata or Buenos Aires, so people can experience for themselves what death is.
And maybe we relate death with pain, because we have to leave someone go to other place, and we suffer through illness.
Yes.
And there's a period in which we feel the pain.
Absolutely, we do. This is the hard place, as we talked about. This is the place where we have the pain. I find in doing my research that dead people don't suffer. They're fine on the other side. I'm always getting that information. I'm fine. I love you. Take care of yourself. Don't be sad for me because I'm fine. There's no pain over there. There's awareness. They can contact us if they need to. Here.
And where is there?
There is not a geographical place.
No, yeah,
it's
I know,
just another dimension, a higher vibration. It's the other side, heaven, cielo, different dimensions. So when I talk about that, I talk about a different vibration. One analogy that I use to think of ourselves is complicated, but it's, for me, it helped me understand, is that here we are as people in physical bodies. We have pain, we have physical bodies. But our spirit, where do you go when you die? Well, maybe it's a higher vibration, but we're still us. It's our souls vibrating at a higher level. And maybe it's higher than that, but we don't necessarily lose our consciousness or our nature. So what I thought about was ice cubes. Sounds strange. Ice cubes that from their freezer.
Yes.
Now we know what ice cubes, if ice cubes could think, they would think, I'm separate, I'm distinct. I have hard edges, right? I'm an ice cube, ice.
Very concrete.
Yellow, I put in, and I'm concrete, I'm separate from other ice cubes. I am my own boundaries. But if you heat the ice cubes, they become water, and they're connected, all one thing. Forever, spirit and water have been connected. Water is a metaphor for spirit. And what happens if you keep heating the water? It disappears.
Air, it becomes
steam. It's air. It's invisible. But it's still there. It's vibrating very rapidly now. We know that because we can take steam and condense it. It becomes water again. Put it in the freezer, and it's ice again.
It's a new life.
A new life.
A new life.
But it's never lost the nature. I think we are like that. We're like the ice cubes in the physical bodies. When we die, we become the water. Concepts of God and beyond that, the steam, the invisible, the unknown. But then new life, coming back as an ice cube. So it explains how we can change our vibration, change our nature, and yet still be the same.
It's incredible. When I was waiting here in front of this window an hour ago, I was looking through this landscape, and I was thinking about how concrete is this world. You can see here ships and trains and cars downstairs. And then there's the water.
Yes.
And then there's the open sky and that blue sky
Yes.
and the clouds. And I was thinking all about that just to ask you about these two levels between concrete world there, down, and this other thing that we have to deal with both of them. And it's very hard to do that.
It is.
But it's our challenge, no?
Absolutely, because they're connected. The worlds are connected. There's contact all the time between the worlds. And I've studied mediums, people who can bring messages from the other side, because this is part of being a psychiatrist. I need to understand in my structure, how do people do this? How does the mind connect and get this information? And because I've had this experience myself of people, mediums didn't even know I had a child that died, or my father, and now they're giving information, much like Catherine, but they didn't even know me. And they talk about these things. And so I wonder, how do they do this? So this is a connection to the other side. People in hypnosis, after death, can do this, death in a past life.
And that's the voice of the masters.
It may be, yes. I think they're spiritual guides, masters, angels, whatever word you want to use. So often we as humans get distracted by a word, and we forget. So people say to me sometimes, boy, they'll say, well, what are masters? What are masters? And I'll say, well, they're spiritual wisdom, intelligence, energy that don't need bodies on the other side. So I don't understand that. I said, think of them as angels. Oh, I know that.
I know that.
Yes. Just a word.
Just to end, which is the message they have for us?
Love. It's always the same message. Only love is real. Love each other. Be compassionate. Don't do these things. Don't hate. Don't do these negative things. It's all about love. That's the energy. That's why we're here. That's the big lesson. That's the only lesson. Love, love, love. And that keeps coming through. And that's what we have to master. Love.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Estuvimos con el doctor Brian Weiss. Y lo último que dijo, ustedes lo han oído, es amor. Que se desparrame sobre todos nosotros.